What time do we have? I have 6:30 on the dot. All right. Good evening, everyone. Wow, these microphones are a lot louder. All right. It is 6:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Uh, It's Thursday, March 10th, 2016, 6:30 p.m., starting the Racial Justice Task Force. Calling the meeting to order. All right, we're going to have a roll call, and we're doing a roll call with a bit of an introduction just because there's some members who are not as familiar with others, and it looks as though our secretary is out, so please bear with me as I am not as proficient with calling the names, okay? Also, if there's anyone who would like to volunteer this evening to be our secretary.
I'll volunteer to take minutes.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. All right. Sarah Bagoyan.
Close, yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Bagoyan.
Bagoyan, all right. Lynn Baraham. Brandon? Okay. Sorry. Kimberly Bryan. Pamela Burnside. Brenda Butts. Samuel Bindum. Here. Alex Evans. Amy Felty.
Here.
David Harbor. Ryan Hughes.
Here.
Artis James. Here. Esther Pat.
Here.
Henry Ross. Kevin Schneider.
Here.
Susan Silver.
Here.
Demario Turner.
Here.
Okay. All right. Francina Turner. Jarrett Walter.
Here.
Rosita Bird. Miriam Rahim. Walter Feinberg. Carolyn Randolph. Go ahead. L&D. All right. Okay. All right. Yes. If any members of the audience would like to speak during public participation, welcome. Good evening, everyone. Please feel free to grab a white sheet and fill it out and bring it up here to me. That way I can get you called. Okay. I know I said previously, as we did roll call, we were going to have like little short introductions. So if you wouldn't mind just going around saying your name, who you are, and we'll do that quickly, just so everybody has an idea of who you are, where you're from.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alex Evans. I'm probably from the Raleigh, North Carolina area. I'm a doctoral student here at the University of Illinois in education policy. I have a background in law, where I went to North Carolina Central University School of Law. Education law, civil rights are my favorite areas, and the school to prison pipeline is something I'm very interested in. So I guess my contribution to this body would largely be in that area.
And I'm Lynn Branham. I'm an attorney. My expertise is correctional and sentencing law and policy, and I was a member of the Community Justice Task Force that did recommend the appointment of this body.
I'm Amy Felty. I live in Champaign, and I'm a retired teacher from Unit 4. I'm also on the Human Relations Commission of Champaign.
Susan Silver, I'm a federal probation officer. I've worked in the federal system for about 25 years and a county probation officer before that, so I have a lot of experience in the local criminal justice system.
My name is Artis James. I'm retired from the University of Illinois Facility and Services. I work with the NAACP. I am part of the North End Breakfast Club and also the National Council of African American Men. And I work with other organizations within the community. And thank you.
My name is Samuel Bindum. I'm an administrator of the Urbana School District. I'm also on the Human Relations Commission here in Urbana. And I just wanted to try and lend support as much as possible and make a difference in our community.
I'm Kevin Schneider. I'm an attorney here locally in Champaign. I'm from Champaign. I've lived in Champaign all of my life except for 9 horrible months in New York City. But
I'm Demario Turner. I'm also born and raised in Champaign. I'm a graduate student of University of Illinois, and I have a background in human resources.
Hi, I'm Kim Bryan. I've lived in Champaign for about 6 years now. I'm a third-year graduate student in the Department of Sociology. I study race, class, and gender disparities in education and the criminal justice system. And my background is in psychology previously, and I've worked with the Girls Advocacy Project, which work with girls involved in the juvenile justice system, and also with the Access Initiative.
I'm Esther Pat, and I volunteer with the American Civil Liberties Union here in Champaign County and Champaign-Urbana Tenant Union, where I've been for many years. And a very long time ago, a little more than 10 years ago, I was an Urbana City Council member.
Hi, I'm Jerry Walter. 40 years ago, I was a bicycle mechanic, and I am one again now. In between, I've worked as a community development specialist in Southeast Iowa and at the U of I for 27 years, teaching rural sociology and agricultural communications, and being an academic advisor.
My name is Ryan Hughes. I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky. I moved here in Urbana in September, and I started working as a transportation civil engineer.
Hi, I'm Sarah Balgoyan, and I'm the Executive Director of the Illinois Balanced and Restorative Justice Project. We work all over the state with juvenile justice as well as schools, trying to end the school-to-prison pipeline with restorative practices.
I'm Melindy, and I'm Illinois born and bred, and I've been here my whole life. And I'm an RN with many years of experience. I work for Parkland, and I currently work for Urbana Schools Adult Education as well.
I'm Mariam Arhim, and I'm a resident of Urbana. My background is in social services with a concentration on family.
I'm Pam Burnside. I'm a retired public defender for Champaign County. I served on the Juvenile Delinquency Prevention Board, I think with Ms. Branham years and years ago. I am now in private practice, and I'm learning school law to be able to advocate. There are very few, if no, attorneys in town that advocate for families with the school districts, and that's what I'm trying to get up to speed on so that I can do that.
All right, thank you, everyone. Next, we want to approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
The agenda is approved. All right, approval of minutes from our previous meeting, February 25th, 2016.
Is now when I mention a correction, or do we get the motion? Okay, because there was a reference to me expressing concerns about structural issues not included in the mission statement, and I believe that was you, Pam, that expressed those concerns, and it was not me. Pam was sitting right next to me, so. Okay, so it's on the second page, in the middle of the page, the paragraph beginning Kevin Schneider. You'll see on the third line, it says Brenda, Lynn, Amy, and Kimberly expressed concerns about other structural issues not included in the mission statement, such as education, housing, and policing. That was not me. So it was, Pam, I believe it was you. Yeah.
I move approval of the minutes with the change on page 2 of replacing Lynn Branham with Pam Burnside.
Okay,
Second.
all right, motion approved. Mr. Hughes, were you able to? Okay, thank you. All right. Oh. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. At this time, we would like to invite public participation. I have Dottie Vera Webb. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Hi, thank you. It's Dottie Vera Wise.
Wise.
First, I want to say thank you very much to all of you who were willing to make the commitment for 18 months of being here twice a month pretty much all the time, because that's really a major commitment. And I had considered applying for it also, but it wasn't going to be possible. Secondly, though, I'm somebody who's done public participation here for the county board meetings, occasionally at Urbana. I'm also on the County Board of Health, and I've seen different ways that it's being done. And wanted to encourage you to do public participation the way it's done in the city of Urbana. And I tried to get an official copy of how they do it and couldn't find one. And so I wrote it up, which I can share copies if it would be helpful. But basically what happens at Urbana is that people who want to speak, similar to here, fill out the public participation slips on theirs. They happen to ask for not only the topic, but whether you're for or against or other. And then when there's, when people's names are called to come up and speak, they either speak at the very beginning or they can request to speak at the time an agenda item is coming up. And when they're functioning as their township board as opposed to their city council, they have a place on there where you can mark also that you just want to indicate that you're for or against something and have it entered in the minutes. And sometimes that is done at the city council meeting as well. But the most important part that I think is a real difference and is real benefit is that there's an opportunity at the end where instead of people just coming up and saying something and we never know whether you've heard us, we never know if you've paid attention or if you care. There's also an opportunity and a time when the city council there actively engages in dialogue with the people who are providing the public participation. And sometimes they'll even call somebody back for clarification of an issue, even if after somebody else has come up to speak, or I don't know whether it happens later in the meeting. So I just want to encourage you in this time period when you're setting your procedures for how to run the meetings and how to organize things, that I encourage you to include that dialogue for the public participation time. And I would be glad to give a copy of my description of it, at least to the person who's recording, and if anybody else would like a copy, I'd be glad to share that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you again. Our next public participant, Christina Kahn.
Dottie's much more professional public participant than me. She should have gone after me. My name's Christina. I'm originally from DC. I've lived here 3 years. My partner Tarek is finishing a PhD. I do work with a lot of local programs. Tonight, I'm sort of half here for myself as a social justice activist for 17 years, and then half here as a representative from the coordinating collective for Build Programs, Not Jails. And professionally, I'm a birth worker, and I present at the university regularly on racism, white supremacy as it relates to reproductive justice. But first, I just want to say personally, this is my personal side. I'm really, really happy to see this meeting happening and all these faces looking at me. Thank you for not playing on your phone while I'm talking to you, which is sometimes what happens at the county board. But and then switching into Build Programs mode now is that we're really, really happy with the things that we've heard as a group that's been working on since the Community Justice Task Force, as Lynn said, suggested having a racial justice task force, have been working with many other groups like North End Breakfast Club, NAACP, Black Lives Matter. There's too many, I couldn't even list them. I was like, if I list them, I'm gonna run out my 5 minutes. So we're just really excited that this is happening and that it's been mentioned several times that you have a desire to engage with the community in the county. So just a little bit of background on that process from us and sort of something that we were thinking about since you met last. After the after the Community Justice Task Force had suggested that this happen, and many different Black-led organizations in the county came to the county board over the span of the last 3 years with little to no success. Build Programs, Not Jails really wanted to initiate a more formalized campaign to make this happen. And in that process over about 18 months, it's hard to focus now on that time frame, we worked with several different community groups. And so many of which showed up en masse, unlike people had seen who were here longer than me. I've only been in this county for 3 years, like I said. And now we are here. But I just wanted to put out there that in our experience, the trust among people most affected by criminal justice abuse in this county, the trust there is low in terms of working with the county. And so for hopefully obvious reasons, which is why folks are here tonight. And so I think this will be a challenge for this group, but not an impossible one. And so our suggestion to you tonight is to create some sort of framework with which to approach communities in CU versus just, people who are here in this room. I know all the people behind me have been working on this for years, have worked and done a lot of energy to make this happen, hoping, I think, from our discussions that something will happen before you just turn it right back around on the community, if that makes some sort of sense. So some sort of structure or framework for what kind of dialogue you're looking for and which communities, because at the last meeting, this phrase kept coming up like the community, And so sort of getting an idea of what that is, who that is. And I talked to Ms. Turner about the possibility of having Build Programs Not Jails come in and do a formal presentation with all the research and data that we have collected over the past several years, so that that information, you don't have to spend time gathering that. A lot of the work has been done by local groups already, not just Build Programs Not Jails, but the NAACP and Breakfast Club and Martell Miller and Terry Townsend in terms with the university. So we're just urging you to take advantage of those resources and those people that have collected all this data, so that there's a foundation with which to create some sort of structure or framework.
I don't want to, I guess, jump out of bounds, but is there a way that we could find out when such a presentation could be given? I think that would be an important.
Yeah, so we actually talked about wanting to do that as soon as possible, because we know that your time frame is so short. And we've talked to other groups that were involved with struggling for this to exist, and they're on board with that as well. I do know that the local Black Lives Matter chapter is conducting a community survey over the time frame where the university has spring break. And so that would be another group that is actually engaging with the Black community as well. And as I said, there are several other Black communities that have been doing this work for a really long, Black organizations that have been doing this work for a really long time. And so engaging with them before, it's just popping into different areas of Champaign-Urbana expecting to have dialogues that require some sort of trust, I guess.
I guess in the interest of sort of starting a dialogue, when would be a reasonable time frame to have a presentation ready?
Oh, well, we do this kind of thing on a regular basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
The one in April?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we don't know how you guys want to schedule things yet, but yeah.
Yeah.
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
And we've been there, right? Anyone who's been in any kind of the group, we totally get it. So but we're also really uptight, and we like to come in the beginning and say our piece before things get rolling. So, and I'm always happy to, you can contact me if you want my information and get in touch with Build Programs Not Jails. But yeah, we would love to do that, but obviously you guys can decide that. And all the data is actually, a lot of it is actually on our website. There's a resources page, and our website is programsnotjails.wordpress.com. And the raw data, a lot of the raw data is there, but it's sort of summarized. So I guess it's not raw data, but anyway, yeah. Yeah, programsnotjails.wordpress.com. And that's my piece. That's all. But I know there's a lot of folks here who have been here for a long time and know who the people are who are working on these issues. So I have no doubt that you will reach out to folks. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the task force member updates. We had some volunteers go and speak to the county attorney to see what we are able to do in terms of communications and things like that.
Well, Artis and I were able to meet with Dave DeThorne at the county courthouse. He is a state's attorney, is that right? And he was very gracious. He gave us almost an hour of his time, and we asked the questions that we had written down from the meeting. So I'm going to ask the question we asked him and give his answer. The synthesis of the first question was, how can we as task force members best communicate with one another outside of meetings? Can we do things like create a commonly accessible website or Dropbox to share articles of interest as long as we don't comment on the articles? Would that site be, could a site like that be open to the public so that they're aware of what we're reading? And the answer was yes. We can have a public Dropbox or a sub-site of the county board's webpage or we can have a link on the county board site to another public site if we want. We can post things of interest, but we can never discuss what is posted for one another to see on that site. So we can't make comments to the site about the articles, and we cannot text or email one another really about them. There are circumstances under which that would work, but he said that's very, very risky. And all texts and all emails are subject to the Freedom of Information Act.
Excuse me,
People-
Amy, could you clarify?
Yeah,
He's saying
just
that
a sec, just a sec, Esther. We can call and talk with one another, and we can meet with one another outside the meetings and discuss things, but never in groups of more than 5. So a person or 2 can get together, 3, 4, 5. It gets riskier as we get bigger. The magic number for us is 6, and none of us can ever meet and talk outside of a meeting about business of the task force or related issues without declaring a meeting and posting an agenda and so on.
Excuse me, Amy, could you clarify? Because I heard you say that one-on-one emails about what's posted are not
No,
allowed.
we shouldn't use emails. He said the problem with emails is, and phone texts, is that they can be
FOIA.
gathered by Freedom of Information Act. And the law evaluates all those communications to see if they're interactive. So even if they're just a couple people really talking on email, it can be done, but we have to be really careful, even if it's a couple people. Is that right, Artis? Is that what you heard?
Well, you know, kind of.
Mhm.
I thought that he was saying that, he did mention that the email can be important, but I thought he was talking about when you have, like, say, more than 5 of us talking. One thing he did say, and he made it perfectly clear that any type of communication we have, we just say we do start email. Let's say I email everyone in here, but we can't. You have to be very careful of that. One-on-one, I personally didn't think he said there was a problem with that. But the main thing he said that when you do send out emails and there's a group, when we respond, we do not hit the reply all. So once you hit that reply all, then you get to the point where you get into like a meeting, open meeting act, you get in violation. So we have to be very careful of that. I personally didn't think he had much issue with us just talking like one-on-one, because he mentioned about, magic number 6. Well, 4 of us talk, well, that's fine. But one thing we have to also be careful when you get into these subcommittees, then that ratio dropped considerably. So it is say if if 2 of us talking and we part of a committee email, when that committee magic number may be 2.
Yeah, let me deal with that in just a second, because specifically what I'm talking about here is about responding to articles that are put on a public site. We should not be emailing one another about that.
Excuse me, are you certain? Because I just don't believe that could possibly be true. Any 2 members of a body, any 2 humans can communicate with each other without violating the Open Meetings Act.
On the public site.
On the
we
site,
should-
but we could email each other privately.
Yes, but
I
I'm
can
not-
read
I'm just-
something, artists can read something, and we could talk to each other
I'm
about
just
it, right?
talking about the
Okay.
public site here. That was my first
You're
question.
saying
was-
not doing email on the public site. is
That's
what you're saying.
correct,
Right,
on the
got it.
public site.
Okay.
Because we can get together outside of that site and talk with one another. But on the public site, we shouldn't be responding at all. Even 1 person, even 2, it doesn't matter. Because that becomes an interactive communication that people are listening to on the board, and we can't do that. So the other issue is a different issue, yeah. So we can have a public drop site if we want. To be safe, he said, don't use email, though. You can talk with one another up to 5, and that's okay, but he said it's a risky business to do. And then we asked if we could use the county board site, if they would do so to create a web page, and he said yes, or a link to a different site through the county board. We asked if we could have a public website for public input, not just for us to post things, but for the public to respond to us, and he said yes. Again, though, we can't respond to people on that site. We asked about Facebook and other social media tools. He said yes, and you have to have someone manage it. Anyone could manage it. Any one of us could do that job. But we can't, again, discuss what's posted on Facebook or Twitter. We can't do things like that.
I just want to clarify, we can't discuss it on Facebook, but we can discuss it at a meeting or?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. And even in person, you can get together with someone. Is everything that would be shared on any such a site available through the Freedom of Information Act? And the answer is yes. And in fact, he said there's one thing we do need to do, and that is appoint a person, or preferably 2 people, who would take care of all FOIA requests, because there's a 5-day, he said, turnaround. So if someone requests to a public site or to us as a board that they want information, that person or his or her backup needs to respond immediately, not have to wait for the board to meet, or else we'd be in violation of the law. So we need to take that up at some point.
I'm sorry, but I thought the state's attorney's office handles all Freedom of Information Act requests to the county. Is that,
Well-
did he seem to indicate he wouldn't, his office wouldn't be doing it for our task force?
If-
Because that's who would do it for the county board.
If our task force is requested to turn over that information, we have to make sure that's done.
Right, but is his office the one, do we just do it and not involve the state's attorney?
We
or are
didn't
supposed
ask
to
him
tell
that,
them?
we
Okay.
didn't ask him that question,
Okay.
but we do have to have someone responsible for that with a backup person in case that person's on vacation or something.
Okay.
So at some point, we'll need to find out about that and make sure we cover that.
And yeah, make sure they aren't, I think they expect us to tell them when there's a FOIA. If the FOIA, I think the FOIA requests go to them, but if it comes to you as chair, I think you need to check with the county, with the state's attorney's office about it, but I'm
Okay.
not sure.
We asked about violating copyright law with sending articles, and there wasn't an answer to that. I think he said he didn't know and he would get back to us. I haven't heard back yet, but we'll follow up on that one. He stressed several times that even if 5 or fewer people are talking about and commenting on ideas and articles and so on, we can discuss things out of meetings, but he really recommended that we not discuss things of substance about this outside of meetings. He said the lines blur quickly when there are comments on things. Then we asked about having community meetings outside of Champaign-Urbana. Can we attend meetings that other people are setting up and other boards are setting up? And yes, any number of us can attend those meetings, but we should not speak up. He said that one person in attendance, say we had more than 5 people there, 6 or more people, one person there, if a comment is made at a meeting, can ask for clarification if what that person just said wasn't clear. But he recommended that no other person ever speak. I asked, well, could a second person ask for more clarification? He said yes, but it's much safer not to, because things are interpreted differently under the law. This is a very risky business. It's hard to keep clarifications from becoming comments. So we could attend things. If we do go and we find 6 or more people there, one thing we can do is to have only 5 stay and the others leave. But we can all stay just so we're quiet. We asked about subcommittees, of course, and I think we discussed some of this, but it's pretty clear. Any subcommittee would have its own majority of quorum. So if you have a subcommittee of 5, a quorum is 3. Majority of quorum is 2. No 2 people can meet together of a subcommittee in between meetings that aren't posted.
Did he say what constituted a subcommittee? I mean, can we still ask for volunteers to do like
We
what you and
cannot
Artis did?
actually ask for volunteers, but volunteers can arise. And he said that it was a good thing that Artis and I were not a subcommittee appointed by the council. We asked to be volunteers, because had we been a subcommittee, we could have been in violation without posting the meeting with him. So if something comes up and people are quiet for just a little while and someone has a real need to say something or volunteer, that person could say, you know, I volunteer, and we could get a couple people to volunteer, but it shouldn't really be appointed by the group as a subcommittee or, you know. I don't know how to do that. He said volunteers are good. Can't be permanent volunteers like forever, I guess, either. Anytime a subcommittee meets, we have to follow the laws of the Open Meeting Act. And those laws include 48 hours ahead of time before a meeting. There has to be a posting on the county website and at the site of the meeting. That would be here. The day and the time and the location. And there has to be a posting of the agenda. And we have to post on the website as well because the county has a website. The meeting must be accessible according to the ADA guidelines for people who would come in wheelchairs or whatever. The meeting minutes must be taken at the meeting and be approved at a future meeting, be distributed. And I think he said, but I'm not clear on this, Artist, that the minutes had to be posted once they were approved too. Did he say that, or is that my imagination? I don't recall that. Okay, I know that's true for the HRC, that once we approve the meetings, they go up on the city site, so we might want to.
It should be true for,
Okay.
I mean, basically, any rule applying to the committee in general is going to apply to the subcommittee, so there's no reason why that wouldn't.
And then another requirement is that, of course, I think we knew that any items can be brought up at a meeting, whether they're listed on the agenda or not, but only items that are listed on the agenda can be voted on at a meeting. So volunteers from the task force can work on things between meetings, but they shouldn't be volunteers who are appointed by the task force. They should be true volunteers. And there should never be more than 5 people who work together on things without posting and holding an open meeting. 5 individuals on their own, not a subcommittee. Okay, then we asked what kinds of subcommittees we can have and how they're governed. And basically, they're governed by the same rules that we just went over, the Open Meeting Act. Can up to 5 members get together outside of the meeting to discuss business and make plans? Yes, this is legal, but it's very risky. He said we should strive to be above board and to be transparent at all times. So people, yes, can talk to one another about business and plans outside of meetings, but just be careful. Be aware, be mindful. Are there any rules that govern who can speak for the task force? He said, no, we make our own rules on that. So if we want to appoint someone for a specific purpose to speak for the task force and to say a specific thing, we can. No one can speak for the group without the group's explicit permission or charge. Even our chair can't speak for the group, but the chair has a little more leeway, I think, than that, in that he can answer questions and things that he knows are true, but he can't give answers and opinions, really, without the task force rules. We should follow rules. Robert's rules are good. We should make the rules simple and suited to our needs. They don't have to be Robert's rules. If there's a parliamentarian appointed, and it's a good idea, he said, to have one, that person is just there to advise the chairperson, not to call any member to account for anything or advise other people. So he said, in general, the chair makes the rules, and the parliamentarian advises the chairs on when the rules are in play. We can pick any number of rules we want and adopt them by majority vote. And because we have no budget, we can do this. I guess if we had a budget, we would be under other constraints. He said having your rule for public input's very important, and he's glad to hear that we've already talked about a rule. He doesn't care what it is, but the 5-minute rule with a 1-hour total is common, and we can always make an exception during a meeting. He said we have to remember we can never prevent people from speaking or insulting us. So if someone wants to get up and rail for 5 minutes at individuals and the board, that's okay. Everyone gets 5 minutes, and at least we'll know that that 5 minutes will end. A person addressing the task force does not have to identify himself or herself by name. nor do people have to tell where they're coming from or where they live or anything else.
How does that jibe with we have a public participation sheet that asks for a name, and then,
A person can refuse to give that name or can comply, but
Then-
we can't force it.
then how do we call them up is I guess my question. Yeah.
I don't know. A person may not even want to sign in there and may want to speak and just say, I don't want to sign the sheet, but I want to speak, and then we could acknowledge them. Who makes the agenda? Anyone can do that we ask. I said, well, our chair's kind of taking that on. Is that okay? And he said, yeah, that's fine, as long as the person wants to. That's good. Each subcommittee, though, makes its own agenda and has to be responsible for posting it. Don't use email, he said again. Phone calls are not subject to the Freedom of Information Act. Then he said the law evaluates communications by whether they're interactive. That's where the violations occur, and he would be the one to prosecute us. He said, if you have questions, ask me. So the one thing is, if we get a budget, I don't know how that changes things, but if we do want a budget, we might want to figure out with Dave, unless somebody else knows, what that changes about the rules that we follow. That's it.
Thank you very
Artists may
much.
have more, I don't know. Okay.
And I spoke with Kay about the capabilities of, and the IT department in communications to see if there was anything already existing, and there is not currently. And so I'm waiting to get further guidance on if a creation of such methods of communication would be possible. And I will update you when I get additional information. All right. Our next agenda meeting, or our next item on the agenda is meeting rules. How fortuitous.
It sounds like Robert's Rules of Order are going to be the simplest way to go at this point, and if it becomes unwieldy, we can, she said, majority vote, we can change it. So it seems like there's no reason not to just use that, because we need something, and go from there.
We got an email from Kate.
Yes.
And she sent a simplified Robert Rules of Order. I think we need to do the simplified instead of just having a broad statement of Robert Rules of Order, because the book is about that thick. Let's go with the simplified Robert Rules of Order, and I think that can govern us fairly well.
I guess I should clarify, I agree.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint a parliamentarian for the meeting rules in case we do get off course. I know you're in charge with guiding the meeting, but maybe appointing a parliamentarian to advise you would be appropriate at this time.
Is there a second? Okay. Are there any volunteers?
Should we vote on whether we
Oh.
want to?
All in favor of a parliamentarian?
Aye.
Aye. All oppose? Okay. Motion carries. Are there any volunteers?
I would volunteer for that.
Okay.
I don't like the Snickers, but.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, Kevin. All right. Do we need a vote since there's only one volunteer? All in favor of Kevin becoming the parliamentarian, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay? Congratulations, Kevin. Another thing was mentioned, though, also in the last meeting was alternates for different positions like secretary or the facilitator.
I'm sorry, do we need a vote on the simplified Robert's rules?
I make a motion that we accept Robert's Rules of Order simplified as our
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, so there was discussion at the last meeting about finding alternatives or alternates for different positions like secretary and facilitator. I'd like to open that up for discussion as part of our continuing discussion on meeting rules.
Ryan's doing a great job as a secretary alternate right now. He's taking feverish notes.
I'll volunteer to be alternate to secretary.
Motion to approve Ryan as alternate secretary.
Write it down, hold on.
1 second.
Okay. All in favor of Ryan becoming secretary? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Just to clarify, alternate secretary.
Alternate. Yes, alternate.
May I ask who seconded that?
All opposed? Okay.
And I would volunteer to be an alternate facilitator if you are sick and unable to come or something else.
Fantastic.
Motion for Sarah
As I'm giving
as
you the glare
alternate
of my
facilitator.
All right. All in favor of Sarah becoming the alternate facilitator? Aye. All opposed? Fantastic. Motion carries. Yes, sir.
I'm wondering if we can address what Dottie suggested about public participation. Is there a way, because I think a lot of folks feel a lot better when they come in and can speak to the group when the group is dealing with something specific rather than just coming in at the beginning. And would there be a way with a form that shows the agenda on it where they could check off which spot they wish to speak?
Or,
Do
I
people-
mean,
how
just
do
to
people feel
simplify
about
things, they could say, I mean, you can say, when you're saying, okay, we have public participation, if I call your name and you'd prefer to speak during a specific, just let me know kind of thing. I mean, that might be the easier way to do it.
Yeah, okay.
But it does seem to me that public participation should be at least some back and forth. So number one, they know that they're listened to. And so we can, I mean, I would like to be able to discuss these things maybe when they come up rather than going, oh, let me take a note on what Dottie said, and then 30 minutes down the road, then we'll talk about those things. I think maybe public participation, the rules should allow for opening the floor for discussion of that thing or something.
I completely agree, and I like the idea of, possibly we could call at the beginning of the meeting, and then people could just defer until a later agenda item in which they want to speak. But I do want to ask one question for clarification, because I do really like this that she wrote up for us. But about our 5-minute speaking time rule, if we are opening for dialogue between task force members and the person who is speaking, how do we adjust their 5-minute, or do we allow them the 5 minutes to speak and then have dialogue back and forth, or do we set a time limit on open dialogue, or how would we handle that?
Well, if you're following what Urbana does, and this is the problem with doing it that way, the person gets 5 minutes, and they may talk the whole 5 minutes, and then where they're done, if anyone here wants to ask them a question, then yeah, it could take longer, and one person could end up being up there for 20 minutes.
Okay.
Which I encourage, and I don't know if this happens as much here as it does at a city council meeting. I mean, what happens at city council meetings a lot of times is that council members are antsy to get involved in debate, and so they don't just ask the question, they carry on the debate just with that, the speaker happens to be the prop when they're really carrying on the debate that they want to carry on with the rest of the members. So I think it can be, I think if you want to change, I think if we want to change the rule from what Champaign and what the county does, where no questions, even if you understand what the person just said, you just can't ask them questions, to allow questions, that would be good, but I don't think we should do discussion of issues at our meetings during public comment, because it'll just, our hour will be gone before, unless there's only 2 people who want to speak, the hour could be gone before we get through all the speakers, because we could spend 15 or 20 minutes on what one person said.
So you're suggesting, one, limiting it to if you, I mean, basically not, here's my position on this, a grandstanding kind of thing, but you can ask for you can ask a question, but it's not about stating our position or each individual member's position, but getting that input from the public, which I think should be the primary goal. I guess my thought is if we end up where the public is taking up too much of our time, I think that's a good problem to have based on where we are now. I'd like to see more people here. We can always amend it later if it becomes an issue.
Can I just say, I think you're envisioning this differently. There are 15 people who want to speak during public comment, or even say 5. There are 5 people who want to speak during public comment, and the first one, Sue, gets up, I just picked that name, and starts talking, and we get interested in what she says. We're actually being rude to the other 4 people who are waiting for public comment, because we've already jumped into discussion before they've even had a chance to speak. That's so. If we want to have open discussion with the audience, then we should. I think it shouldn't be part of public participation. We should, at the meeting, someone should make a motion to let's open this up and have a dialogue with everyone in the room. But where we end up with the one person just being the focus point for the whole discussion, I think it derails the meeting and can have the effect. Unless there's only one person in the audience, it does have the effect of inadvertently cutting out the rest of the audience, and so we should be mindful of that.
Yeah, when I brought this up, I mean, I'm just imagining what Dottie had to say is we have people who come and address us just as they would in public participation at the beginning, except they can do it at more appropriate times during the meeting. I don't imagine, and I really don't think it's a good idea to have a back and forth at that point, or a discussion or a debate or anything, either amongst ourselves or with the member of the public. And Esther gave some really good reasons for not doing things that way. I'd say we've got an issue, we have 3 people want to speak to that, and we listen to them, and then we move on to something else, and we have somebody who wants to speak to that, and we hear from them at that point. If we want to go back, I think, yes, then we say, okay, let's talk to the public here, open this up to the whole group, and we can have a back and forth.
So, to be clear then, so the person wanting to speak we would still only give them the 5 minutes. We would not ask questions. And
That's the
then
way I see it, yeah.
we as a group would have the option later that we could request for that person to come back and open up a back and forth dialogue if we
Sure.
chose to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that one doesn't work. The way I'm envisioning it and the way that I've observed it with Urbana is that clarifying questions are asked of the individual, which in my mind makes sense. If a person makes a presentation and there's some issues or some questions about what they're presenting that a member would like to have clarified, that's the way it happens. The body then does not necessarily discuss the issue. We ask any clarifying questions. Because if it morphed into a discussion, yes, it would take up lots of time. But to get clarifying, if a person gave us some information and someone was not clear about the information, to ask a follow-up question would be appropriate. And it would not be and it would be following the person's 5 minutes. We wouldn't interrupt their presentation to ask our question. We would ask it after the presentation. And that's the way I think we would best serve the public participation. Then, after all of the commentary, if issues are discussed and during our discussion, a point comes up that we're not clear about and that person is still present, then they would call them back up to ask additional questions.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the kind of thing we want to do. We would be out of order if we were having a discussion about an issue during public participation anyway.
I guess I understand that. My concern is, number one, say something gets brought up in public participation that needs to be addressed. I don't think we'd be able to vote on that, for instance. And so that would be one of my concerns if it's something that needs to be addressed. So maybe, I mean, if we put a separate agenda thing for possible discussion of public participation items brought up, could we vote on that?
Sometimes the public participation is in regard to an agenda item that we would be voting on that night. So there are instances that public participation would be something that's being voted on if the participation was addressed to a specific agenda item. So there's a possibility that we could. And sometimes the reason that public participation is, the purpose is to influence how we're going to vote on something or how we're going to adopt a policy. So to allow for that when the agenda item is about to be discussed, that's the purpose of it, is to hear from the public their to receive their input about that particular item.
Understand. Is it all right, Chair, if, I'm just asking, we're talking about Dottie as if she's not here. It's not working, so. We're talking about her as if she's not here, right? So can we ask her to maybe give us a little bit of input, not to go back and forth, but she's heard our discussion and she's the one who brought it up. So if it's okay for her to actually let us know her perspective, since she brought it to the table for us to discuss anyway.
Is there any objection to that by any other committee members? All right. Dottie, would you like to come and clarify your request?
Thank you. Yes, I am still here. Yes, I think that my expectation and, the definition of what's clarifying questions and at what point that becomes a discussion, I think that my idea of a discussion was that it would be a series of clarifying questions, even though that's not how I wrote it out. And that it would not be a matter of arguing back and forth with the individual who's given the public participation, but trying to be sure that there's clear understanding on what that person meant as a participation. And then in terms of the timing of it, I think that what you've talked about is what I was expecting. Do you have any clarifying questions for me? Right, that's sometimes somebody might be asked, and again, these were not their official rules. This is based on my observation and some other people's observations, and there are other people here who have been at the Urbana City Council meetings and perhaps have served on the City Council, who understand the process as well or better than I do. So I think that, again, that was the idea that somebody might be called back to explain again what they were talking about further. It really was more of the clarification issue rather than an arguing back and forth, a discussion of that kind of nature. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. They're all going out.
I think if you turn yours off when you're not using them, the others will come on. That works, so, okay. I like that the discussion for the last few comments have waited for the chair to recognize the person instead of us just jumping in. I think that smooths it out. And I would like to ask, too, that we consider letting the chair decide when to have a speaker continue and whether there should be clarifications. Because I'm sure that if we try to make a policy that covers everything, it won't. And yet, our facilitator can do that real well, I thought.
Yeah, I'm here struggling with this a little bit because this is the Racial Justice Task Force, and we do need to get as much information we can. I like the idea of having a clarification, but also I'm struggling with I definitely don't want to get into no type of debate. And when we do ask for clarification, we may have to have a rule that's governed that clarification, or it'll be 1 minute to respond, because we don't need a person to continue on for another 5 minutes. So that's something else we probably have to think about. But we do want, that's why I'm struggling with it. We do want public participation, and we want to get all the data we can, all the information we can, so that when we come up with our recommendation, we have a real concrete recommendation. So I'm repeating myself. I am struggling with this a little bit. But if we do, and maybe we need to limit it to 3 questions. I'm just throwing things out here. Maybe, the facilitator can come up with a couple questions and maybe a couple other people, and then we have to cut it off. 1 minute response from the person that answered, because we may get into some very heated, real passionate people may be up here talking about certain things, and we just don't want to energize them any more than they really are. We don't want them to get more emotional than what they really are, because some of the things that's been going on, especially when you're talking about injustice, people are real passionate about some of this stuff. So we have to be very careful. So I'm still thinking about it right now, how we should proceed with this, but I just want to throw that out. Maybe someone else got some ideas, I don't know, something.
Thinking about that, it certainly could come up, but I think, a 5-minute limit, and then if it appears we need more time, we can decide as a group to suspend the rule at that moment. The Supreme Court has a time limit on everybody, and that includes the questions. And I'm not sure I want to be like them, but I think just we can't anticipate everything that's going to come up. And so it's just, we've got 5 minutes, for you to speak. There may be some questions, understand that, and, keep it brief if you can.
Yeah, so I'm been kind of taking some notes to sort of track this and try to create, keep things in line for some sort of a policy. So what I'm getting from what we've been discussing is that the public speaker would have their 5 minutes uninterrupted, and that they can defer to a later point in the agenda if they wish. After they speak for their 5 minutes, I like that he suggested setting a limit, so possibly 3 clarifying questions could be asked by members of the task force. And as Amy said, if you have a question, perhaps just raise your hand and the chair can, call so that we can have a limit of 3 clarifying questions, and then a time limit for the response from the public participant, possibly 1 minute, to answer the clarifying questions, so that we have some sort of a constraint on the amount of time for the discussion. And then the chair can elect to call a participant back to ask more questions later on during our open discussion. And of course, the caveat that we could amend this as necessary or vote to override if we need.
So I've got a couple things. Number one, I think maybe going with the light system as opposed to raising hands might be more effective. Then we can see that 3 people are waiting to speak or something like that. But I also think that the public needs to be made aware at the beginning of the meeting that these are the rules. So I think if we do decide on whatever the rule is, I think it should be something that's short, simple. You can read it out at the beginning of the meeting, call this meeting to order. We're going to have public participation. If you want to participate, you fill out the sheet, whatever we decide, and then they're informed ahead of time, here's what the rules are, here's what the limitations are. That way it's not a shock to anybody, because I don't think we said anything to anybody about there being a 5-minute. If they start talking and then we go, oh, sorry, your 5 minutes are up, go sit down, I think that's only gonna be a problem. I think it's something that needs to be sort of,
Could we just print it on the sheets?
I would think so.
And then it would be on the sheets that everybody fills out? They would have the rules? I mean, if, whatever we decide on for a policy. I don't know who prints the sheets, so.
In addition, there's also a process. Sometimes a person has a presentation that takes longer than 5 minutes. There's also a process where another person can give their time to a person. I think that might be useful for us to have that as a part of our policy, that if a person who signed up for time and a person who's already speaking, they can say, they can have my time. I think that I would like for us to incorporate that into our public participation rules also.
I actually don't agree with that, because what concerns me with that is then a group of people are going to come together and agree that we're all going to give one person the time, and then our whole hour is devoted to listening to one person. I think that, and as we heard from, I'm sorry, I don't remember her name, Christina, who talked about other groups coming in and making presentations. I think we should, discuss that and come up with a policy, but I think that if a group or an individual wanted to make a larger presentation that would be longer than 5 minutes, that they could ask us ahead of time, and that would be put on the agenda, that they would be, giving a formal presentation to the task force. So rather than having to, 3 or 4 people are all going to give one person their 5-minute public participation, if somebody wanted to present for 15 or 20 minutes or half an hour, they could ask us that and it would go on the agenda.
That is not what I was making reference to. I was not making reference to a person giving a 20-minute presentation and other people giving them their time. I was making reference to allowing a person to have 7 minutes maybe if they were going over time. And I just personally wouldn't anticipate that a group would come in and sabotage the process, that the public would do that. But in any case, the ability for a person to give somebody else some of their time, I don't see why that would be problematic.
No.
So I don't really object to maybe one person, giving their time to another person. I just mean that I would object to 2 people giving their time to one person. So if there's something to think about, if there's a person that's going to run over time and there's another person say, well, I was going to speak to that within my time, then I think we can probably work with that.
Would it be an issue of suspending the rules in the same way that you mentioned before, Kevin?
Well, my thought on it is that somebody doesn't necessarily have to give their time. I mean, the board. I mean, we can motion to suspend the rules and allow them more time. We can. I mean, we don't have to say, hey, maybe this will happen in 4 meetings from now that somebody will want 7 minutes. If they do, I mean, the way things are going now, I think we might be making more of an issue than needs to be. We can say somebody reaches the end of their time, a board member goes, I move that we waive the time requirement, or extend the time to 7 minutes for this person, and then seconded, voted, and then we move on.
I really don't agree with that, because we get into a situation where other people feel that they need time, extra time, then so how are we going to govern that? I mean, we can't pick and choose who we like to give more time to. I think that's problematic to, just from a public perception. You know, we don't have any ill intent, but I can potentially see a problem there.
I think that if we're concerned about the equality of that, then, then we could say the rules are the rules, and you have 5 minutes, and you should, as long as they come up aware that they have exactly 5 minutes, then I think we should just stick with that.
I just want to go on the record to say that I feel like policies and rules are the reasons why we're here, right? With the community that we're here for are harshly governed by policies and rules, and they're fucking fed up with rules, right? So I don't think we should be sitting here and talking about policies and rules to control people who are coming in here who we're here to serve. If there's an instance where we need to politely ask them, can you please wrap up? Okay, but I feel like this conversation is very circular, and it's problematic because that's what we're here for, is to work for the community.
Yeah, oh, sorry. I tend to agree. I feel like I don't know that we need to spend so much time on this, and we really want public participation, and we are trying to make these rules to limit it before we've even had the blessing of having a ton of public participation. So, you know, I don't know how to go forward with this, but I would say maybe, you know, mimicking some of the Urbana City Council things, but including public participation across the agenda and having opportunity to converse with people, ask clarifying questions, even potentially make it a discussion. I think that should be acceptable in the business that we're going to be doing on our agendas. So I would agree with Alex on that.
I guess my concern is that we give an hour of our 2 hours to public participation, and then we only have an hour to do the business of what we're here to do. We talked last week, or 2 weeks ago, about the need to get into the community and have forums, or however those discussions are supposed to take place, to get the input. Are we then supplanting that with them coming into this meeting and eating up time? If it gets, like Artis was saying, if it gets heated and emotional, and it can, knowing some of the players that have been active, that's my concern, is that we're going to spend a lot of time listening and not doing anything then, and then what have we accomplished at the end of the 18 months? And I'm probably saying that very inarticulately, and I apologize, and I hope that I haven't offended anyone, but I want to make sure we get to do the work that we need to do. And if we're going to have these other meetings outside with community members, that we have a separate designation for what we're looking for in those meetings versus what the public commentary is here. And maybe I'm making a molehill or a mountain out of a molehill, I don't know.
Yeah, I wanted to agree. I think that the way that we were discussing these rules for public participation, I was thinking of in terms of our regular every other Thursday meetings when we're supposed to be, you know, making decisions and trying to get things accomplished. I had anticipated, as we had discussed, that we would be scheduling specific meetings that would be for groups to present to us or to have open dialogue and discussion with people in the community that would be more free-flowing, and for them to really speak to us and address us. And for those set meetings, we would not be necessarily following these rules as we're discussing right now. The rules that we're discussing now are in terms of our meetings so that we can, schedule our time appropriately so that we're getting things accomplished.
I just wanted to follow up with that. I agree with both perspectives. I don't think the rules that we're setting now is to in any way limit or restrict public participation. I think the idea of setting time limits for public participation is aligned with us staying on task with the agenda and the items that we set to discuss for the week. So I just want to agree with Pamela and, sorry, what's your name? Kim. That there should be a forum for which we could allow a more open dialogue outside of our regularly scheduled every Thursday meeting.
So I think one of the, there's some pushback about this task force being formed the way it's as it's been formed, that it's very structured like this. And, we're trying to play the role of kind of a county board or a city council with all of these. And I don't think that's the community's hope for this task force. I really think that their input is part of our work, right? If we don't get through an agenda in 2 hours because we had something happen in the community and there was a lot of participation from the public that needed to happen, part of what our community needs is a voice and an opportunity for healing and sharing. And, so if we have to hear from the public for more than an hour and table some things on our agenda till the next time, or meet in our committees to do the work that comes back from the community, I think that that's our role. I think that I can understand wanting to be sure that we don't not do our work, that we don't put aside that what we've been tasked with, but I think as a task force, the community is looking to us to get down to business and to hear what they think that business should be.
I guess I would say that I've been swayed by Alex and Sarah. I also think that maybe we're making an issue where there doesn't need to be one. If we at some point have a meeting that is completely unruly and there are 70 people wanting to speak all at the same time, that might be a different story. We certainly haven't had that yet, and I would like to see more people here and more people speaking. I don't think the limits are unreasonable or anything, but at the same time, I think we might be creating a problem that's based on expectations and rather than based on what's happened or what will happen.
I started this by just wanting to distribute public participation throughout the meeting as appropriate, and that's basically what I want to do. I move we adopt that format where public participants may determine at which point in the meeting, they'll have to say so when called on, but at which point in the meeting at which they wish to make their comment.
Did you make a motion?
Yeah, I
Okay.
moved that we do that, perhaps not artfully spoken. Basically, trying to amend what we adopted, I think, last time or the time before. And it's just, don't confine all the public participation to the beginning of the meeting. So that if people want to speak to a specific item that's on our agenda, then they may do that. And maybe several people want to speak to this item rather than that item. They just simply need to identify when called on, I don't want to talk now, it'll be later, or we need some other mechanism to know.
Okay. And there was a second? All right, all in favor? Okay. Yes.
So in terms of clarification, so then the speakers then would be relegated to 5 minutes, but it doesn't seem to cap the public participation at 60 minutes, which is okay, but I think we need to be clear about that, so that the discussion or input from the public is throughout the meeting and is 5 minutes per person. I want to make sure, that's my understanding of what the motion is. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
I think at this point, you're probably correct. We do have a limit written in our rules. We also, I don't think we got anybody here who's going to go to their death defending that time limit if it looks like we want to hear from more people. I don't know how we manage that. You know, what happens if a whole bunch of people come, or if it adds up, and if you slip it in at different places here, then you don't know when your 60 minutes are up. Damn, let's find out, I guess.
According to the motion or what carried last meeting, we didn't specify that public participation had to be in the beginning, right? So it was 5 minutes per person, 60-minute total time. I think this whole discussion is simply like, can we be flexible with that and move it around? And we've already adopted, we already voted for that piece. So I don't know what to do with that. The motion. I don't know, but that, I think we were just suggesting, like Roddy, suggested that we can have some other opportunities for clarification as well as throughout the meeting.
How's this to clarify? I think this is really what your motion was, that the motion was that we agree to a rule that anyone who wishes to address the body can do so at public participation at the beginning of the meeting, or if they so indicate, they can, the individual can speak before the agenda item that interests them. That was basically what you were saying, right? Yeah, so that doesn't really change anything. It's just a rule to clarify that we're going to allow that. So I don't think the motion's unnecessary. I think we can just vote on it.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Sure, but it's hard to hear you.
I'll use my playground voice, okay? I'm from the school business. Recorded? Okay.
Yeah, there's a microphone.
I just had a comment on Amy's task force report. I was out of the room when you started. I'm Dolores Henry. Nice to see all of you. Who did you talk to about the Open Meetings Act?
We talked to Dave DeThorne, the state's attorney at the courthouse.
Did he make you aware of this website that the state offers? Normally, when people serve on committees, there's a website you can go on and take the training. It's
Yes,
very
in fact,
easy.
we all are required to take that training within 90 days of appointment, but we knew that. We just had specific questions.
Okay, so the next question is, do you plan to publicize like a calendar of your meetings? So where
That's
can
on-
I find that?
That's on the county website, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah, that was approved last week.
okay, thank you.
All right, our next agenda item is the community meetings. During the previous meeting, we discussed going out into other areas, other venues other than here to engage different communities. Yes.
Here's what I would suggest for that subject. perhaps informed by what's just happened the last hour. There are some important questions we have to address concerning community outreach. Where we go, who we're meeting with, making sure that we get input from the public about those meetings, what's the format, and so on and so forth. So my personal view, and again, I don't know if anyone will agree, but that we have a smaller group that addresses such issues as location, number of meetings, format, how would people be invited, questions, gets input from us and the public about that, and then we make final decisions. But otherwise, we better set a full Saturday to address community meetings, because it will take us 8 hours as a big group. So that'd be my recommendation. And what's the magic number? So it'd be 5 or less. I'm not sure we really need 5, but maybe we do, because this is so critical in terms of our information gathering. So I could put that into terms of a motion, and then we could discuss it, but I don't know if we're there yet, as they say.
So you're saying if we had, say, 3 volunteers,
I'm not going there, remember
then they could
Yeah.
sort of investigate the feasibility
Yeah.
of different community meetings or whatever, and come back and report to the committee.
Exactly. But again, we want to make sure there's mechanism in place still to get ideas from the public. And I know that I have some, I'm not volunteering to be on this group, but I certainly want to talk to the group, those volunteers about incorporating what we call restorative practices as part of getting that input. It's just a way for people to really feel included and really have a voice, and I really think that process is important for us. So yeah, I guess that's what I was saying, Kevin, volunteers, but I think a smaller group is needed.
One thing I think we should, I don't know if this is putting the cart before the horse, if I feel scheduling the meetings is first, but I think if we schedule a bunch of community meetings and the focus is as broad as our mission statement, that we may, I'm sure people come, some people will come, but in terms of trying to reach the people who aren't already involved in this dialogue, I think we need to do a little more, we need to get a little more specific about what in the world we're doing. You know, we're having this public meeting, come talk. What are they supposed to come talk about? And it's really hard to get, and again, don't think just in terms of activists from the organizations who are already involved in this, but if you really want real people, if we want people to come forward and tell us about their experiences and their perspective on things from what they've been through, I think there needs to be some definition of what we're talking about, something more narrow than racial justice. It doesn't have to be as narrow as, today we're going to have a hearing, we're going to have a public meeting about bail amounts. And this time we're going to have a public meeting about restorative justice. It doesn't have to be that specific, but I think we have to make it more specific than just inequities, you know, racial injustice within the criminal justice system, because I just think people don't know yet how to zero in on what we're doing, because they don't know what we're doing, and we're not clear yet on what we're doing either. So which is not to disagree with that. I'm just saying I think somewhere in this planning should include trying to give some focus when we communicate to the public what it is we want them, we're soliciting.
I agree with Lynn's idea. I think that's a very good idea, and I think Esther's point is also very well made, and that would be the topic that would be best discussed as our full committee. And maybe in the meantime, if we had volunteers, they could continue to work on, community meetings planning, so that when we are ready to move forward with, hey, this is what we'd like to do and what we'd like to talk about, we can go ahead and jump right into that and not be delayed.
One comment I have, just again, as you kind of put this kind of vision together, whatever you decide, we had decided not to set up our subcommittees yet, because we wanted to start with the outreach and input, and that would inform the selection of the subcommittees. So we really don't know yet. I mean, I've got my own little list here in terms of suggestions if we had to make a decision today. But what we could do is give illustrations of topics and make sure that it's not, you know, that it's still not, you know, whatever, we aren't excluding anything else. So for example, we could say find, you know, cash bail or whatever, but we don't want to plant too too many seeds. So we could give illustrations, but provide some guidance, but again, leave the maneuvering room for people to say really whatever they think bears on racial disparity in the criminal justice system.
I think if we create a subcommittee though, then we have to follow the meeting rules and have an agenda. And so if people just volunteer to do this, we're not bound by those rules.
I would love to be a part of helping the logistics, and I volunteer to be a part of the community meetings piece, and I agree with both, with all the voices so far, that I think, I don't know if this is on, I think we need both a little bit of clarity on what input we want from the community, so we know what we're asking for, and people know what they're coming to talk about. And we also need to be broad enough and vague enough to not limit what the public wants to tell us that they think the issues are. So finding that balance somehow.
I think that if a person volunteers, I think part of what Dave DeThorne was saying was that person should be specific about what she's volunteering for. So if you had an idea of what you'd like to do and you could state that more clearly, that might be good.
I volunteer to work with a few others from the task force to begin the planning of some community events with input from the larger group on what those might be. And outside community. Any others want to help with that?
I'll volunteer.
Thanks, Artis.
And I'll volunteer for that also.
Thanks, Miriam.
Anyone else?
So maybe we should, we could bring back to the next meeting some ideas about things that we could be doing for our volunteer work to help this get started.
I'll also volunteer for that.
Thanks, Pam.
I think we're
Okay.
the limit on that.
Great.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can only
in
have
fact,
5 at
four's
most,
good.
so four, I think 4 is a good number, as I winkingly said earlier for that.
And I just I wanted to
Or an
clarify then,
alternate.
it seems to me, because I believe in, we need to get all the views, be very inclusive, but get the job done and do it to a level of excellence if we can do that. So I think we might save some time and facilitate what you're doing if we provide some feedback to you, if any of us have ideas now. So it's okay, as I heard you say, we could send, how would you want us to do that? Just send an email to, how do I do that? Somebody help me, because I don't want to
Amy, is that, Amy, remind us what we can
Okay,
do.
you could
Just
send,
the email, just send it to Sarah, Sarah, 'cause she was on who first tossed,
Yeah.
or
One
can we
person,
send it?
yeah,
No.
she's volunteering.
Yes. Yeah,
Volunteering to volunteer.
we definitely can, because FOIA doesn't matter, I mean,
Yeah,
honestly.
is that okay, Sarah?
Okay.
Yes, that's
All right.
okay.
Good.
So the person to send in any kind of inquiry or ideas would be Sarah for the meetings.
And I'd
So-
really encourage
I
that.
understand that
Yeah.
Sarah volunteered to do that,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes,
Sarah
I
volunteered.
volunteer to
That's pretty
accept
important, right.
insight and feedback and thoughts and comments from all
To
about
accept
community
individual
events.
emails
Just an
and to talk,
individual
and anybody
email.
in the committee talk to people one-on-one and all.
Okay. And my email's published? I don't know, yep. So that's there, and also from the community, definitely open to that. And I would ask for input on specific locations, community, areas of the communities around Champaign-Urbana, around Champaign County.
Groups.
Input on focus areas, questions we might have for the community, input on facilitation and practices that we might want to use for community events, and dates, times, any other logistics you want to give me your input on, I'd be open to that. Thanks.
Artis, you mentioned the North End Breakfast Club, that you participate in that, is that right? I mean, I think that's, I mean, certainly a place to get started. I mean, in my opinion, as far as getting input from the sort of the greater community, I think that's a good place to get started. And that's just my personal thought. I just wanted to bring that up now. Yeah.
And I think some of the black churches too.
I'd recommend to Sarah and those helping her to perhaps come up with a list or a database of organizations that would be interested in our work and who we could reach out to among those organizations.
Yeah, and we'd love the help from the community with that too, because I'm sure there's already the records that are existing. Thanks.
Just for clarification, Sarah, for this group, you guys are also coming up with what they're talking about, or that's not part of this? We need to do that separately?
Any other discussion, questions? I think I believe it's on the schedule, but you could always designate someone to provide the update. One of the volunteers.
Can you Skype us from Hawaii or?
I'll be in O'Hare at that moment. Maybe it could be on the phone if that was a possibility. Coming back from London though, so I'm excited about that.
Is this a different topic or same topic?
Is it?
I don't think we.
No, there's no vote. No.
I wanted to volunteer for something different, but
We're still on the same topic right now.
On the
Community meetings. All right. Okay. Anything else? We are going to move on to the next agenda item. Special guest and recommended readings.
The reason why I'm talking again is because someone came up to me after the meeting 2 weeks ago, and actually 2 people did, and mentioned that it might be helpful for this committee, this task force, to get an overview, a brief overview, 10 or 15 minutes of the work of the Community Justice Task Force. I would recommend that because some of its recommendations bear greatly on the issue of racial disparity, and it just provides you a foundation. If you want that, I did serve on the task force. I'd be happy to do that. James Kilgore was also a member, and he and I could coordinate if he wanted to participate in that presentation as well. I know James isn't here now, but I could reach out to him. So again, I just wanted to mention that. If that's something that you think would be helpful.
Lynn, how does that overlap with the build programs, not jails?
The Community Justice Task Force was appointed by the county board, and it was comprised of county board members and the like. And build programs, not jails, is a community.
No. I just mean informationally. I mean, if we're talking about like sort of a background.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So that would be the second speaker I would recommend that we have. I do feel that we need to have somebody come in and give, again, you could get the hour presentation or a 20-minute presentation that synthesizes data on racial disparity. That would not be the presentation I'm talking about.
Okay.
I think it'd be nice to have both at the same meeting to give us that foundation of statistics about race. And then one thing that would have to be found out is, it'd be helpful to get as much, like, this is what it looks like in terms of arrests, you know, prosecution, if you've got all that. And I think what we probably need to decide again, but I think it would be helpful to get input from you, to get an effective presentation, you know, about how long can they give it to us in 20 minutes and then open up for questions? I simply don't know.
Would you mind coming up and coming up to the mic? Yeah.
Yes, please.
And I'm probably not the only one who could answer that too, so, but yeah.
I guess what I'd want to know is sort of, I had asked briefly, I guess inappropriately interrupted, but how much time you'd need to prepare a presentation. You said you guys do it all the time. What's the time frame that you need out of a meeting for a presentation?
Well, it depends on who's contributing. So like if Lynn is contributing, and I also would actually recommend that at least 5 or 10 minutes is given to Planners Network, which is a chapter at the university who has actually done a lot of the nitty-gritty of mapping out arrest in terms of race and gender in Champaign County, and they've made maps that are really easy to see, and they've helped us with presentations. I mean, we've squeezed them in the 5-minute public participation before, but that's rough. So I mean, Dottie, what do you think that would look like? And I don't know, Lynn, what you're thinking, like to brief about the Community Justice Task Force, because often we actually do that to set it up, so that would save us time.
Yeah, so I would treat these as 2 separate presentations. I think that would be important. Okay, so it would be me and then potentially James providing the foundation about our recommendations, what they mean. Then separate and apart from that, you and then whoever else giving us racial statistics. So I think it'd be important to treat them as 2, and then in just the order we can decide. But they're really, you know, I'd probably start with the Community Justice Task Force and then get the racial statistics. So that really, you don't have to worry about what we do. We would be doing. I'd talk to James, but I think we can do it. Ours, the Community Justice Task Force, in 15 minutes. But I'd like to, if he's going to participate, I'd like to get his views about what he thinks would be. You know, it's one of those we could spend an hour or 2, but I just as soon give you the broad overview, but enough, you know, and something in writing, and which would contain more details.
Yeah, and we could give, you know, sheets with all the data on it. It is summarized on our website, and but we do cover anything related to discipline, including school disparities. Yeah.
I guess what I want to know is if we said, hey, we need you to speak, not at the next meeting because it's going to be spring break, there's probably going to be fewer people here, but the meeting after that, could we set, say, Lynn for 15 minutes, you for 30 minutes, and then the other group for 10 minutes, or whatever will be appropriate? Would that be feasible to do?
Yes.
Because I think that's I mean, we're talking about informational. A primary goal of ours, I think, should be fact-finding at the beginning, so we sort of have a good idea as to what we're dealing with. And then, so I think.
Just wanted to say an hour for this is absolutely what we ought to be doing at the beginning. I've got much other business now that we have our meeting rules figured out. We can spend an hour, and we should do it more than once. We should do it a lot. Informal presentations as well.
I was just going to suggest that I know a lot of people here are affiliated with other organizations that do this type of work, and obviously we've already had some groups and organizations approach us, and yeah, I'm very much open to wanting to hear you know, people who have already worked on this topic and the information they have. But I wanted to suggest that possibly we could just request that people who wish to make a formal presentation could possibly just contact. Yeah, and we can just, and just say, you know, we'd like half an hour or we'd like an hour, and then you on a certain date, and, you can work that onto the agenda for us, rather than, needing to have discussion for every group that wants to present.
I guess I would suggest that we just, at the very least, we've got 3 things that we've been suggested with Lynn, your group, with the planning group, and with the build programs, not jails. So I think that at the very least we should just go ahead and set these on the agenda for 2 meetings from now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, those that are here, and, let's get it on the agenda, and for other groups that want to make a presentation, they can just contact Samuel and get
So
it on the agenda.
I guess I would move that we just set those 3 groups for basically the entire agenda, other than the public participation, for 2 meetings from now.
I personally would not like to hear from 3 groups in one night. Firstly, after presentation, I would think we would allow time to have some conversation and some questions and follow up with their presentation. It's not like a marathon movie or whatever. So I would like for us to do maybe, in addition, we'll have other business and other stuff. So it just doesn't seem feasible or reasonable, I'll say reasonable, to me to have all 3 of the groups in one night. We also want to digest the information. It just, even if they're related, if I know build programs and not jails has been on for a while, and some other stuff, and also, so that's my comment, that's my input. For me, it doesn't work. I wouldn't like to have 3 presentations on the same evening.
Would it be possible to do one, our next meeting, and then do maybe the build schools, not jails, and build programs, not jails, and the planning, like you said, planning network? Is that correct? Planners Network, for that following meeting, those 2, and spread those meetings out over several weeks.
I'm just trying to figure out what the date is, and that I'm only.
April 14th.
Okay, thank you. And that I'm also just one person who came to make a 2-minute comment tonight and not the leader of the groups. And so I would want to just confirm that that works for other people, and I can communicate with
Me?
whoever I'm
That's
supposed.
fine.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if that's
Well,
okay.
yeah, we're not going to set an agenda. we're
Okay.
just offering up
But
as
that's,
an
yeah,
idea.
I mean, I would say if I could generally just say, yes, that sounds very great. and
Okay.
We would love to do that.
Fantastic. Yes.
I have a question for Lynn. Out of the task force, or the criminal justice committee that you were on, did that generate the Champaign County Criminal Justice System Assessment? Is that the report that you guys generated out of your committee?
It was called a report, but I'm sorry, so.
Final report?
Yes.
I got some information online, and I wanted a copy of it, but it's like 250 pages. So I didn't know if this was what the group that you participated on earlier.
There are 10 recommendations, so, yeah. And there's a big document, and there's an executive summary too. That's probably what I'd bring to the meeting, so you all have a hard copy. So, now the one thing I should ask you as you decide who, I think we have a challenge having a meeting 2 weeks from now, but I'm kind of anxious, as you can probably see, to get out of the gates and start running. But the one thing I have to say is I was on this task force that developed recommendations, for example, pretrial services, community sanctions, and the like. But I also, as a spinoff from that, worked on a project to try to get a grant, and there was enormous movement amongst criminal justice officials here in trying to get that grant. That's not reflected in the report, and I really want to share it because I think it'll really encourage you in the work we're about to undertake. And I would be reluctant to share that and not have many people there, honestly. So, so I don't know. I don't want to say, I think this, if your statistics are all written up and we have hard copies and you guys could do it in 2 weeks, I guess we need some flexibility as to who's going to talk in two weeks from now. Because like I said, there's just some details involving law enforcement and the like, and some real movement that relates to racial disparity issue that's not in that report, but y'all need to know about it.
Can
And
we, I guess, can we hope that we can put it on the agenda, and if you can confirm, you can email
I guess what
Sam?
I'm saying is that it sounds like a lot of you are going to be gone.
Oh, okay,
And
so you're
so if
saying
that's
maybe-
true, my question is, if this is mostly statistics, if the statistical presentation should be in 2 weeks, because we have the hard, you said it, we have the hard copies on the website, and then if I should go 2 weeks after that, potentially with James if he's available.
If a substantial number of us will be gone for the next meeting, then I think it's kind of discourteous to have anybody come. If a substantial number of us are not going to be here, that's just rude, you know, to have people come and a substantial number of us aren't present. So I think we should delay it until, because during spring break in this town, lots of people are associated with the university and other things, and they just won't be available. So I just think it would not be appropriate. It would not speak well of us to bring somebody in to speak to a skeletal group of the committee. That's my thinking about it.
Are we allowed to change one meeting date?
Yeah.
The room is a problem. That's why if you look at our meeting dates, they're not always the second and fourth Thursdays. If you look at the whole list, it's basic because the county board meets, there's something about after the first Monday or something. And anyway, these are the rooms, these are the nights we could get the rooms. So we can't just push it to the week before or the week after because we'll conflict with something else. But
What
I
we
was
talked,
wondering, could you ask for a show of hands of how many of us are going to be absent in 2 weeks? Because it may not even be more than a couple.
could I get a show of hands of those who will be absent for the next meeting?
Just 3 of us.
I think it wouldn't be any less than what we have tonight.
I just wanted to say, first of all, it doesn't even look like we're gonna get through the whole agenda tonight before our 8:30, time limit. And we already have another, sort of feedback that's gonna be coming at the next meeting about the community outreach volunteers. So I don't necessarily think that we have to have a presenter at the next meeting if a lot of people aren't gonna be there. I think that, that is something that could be worked out individually, to schedule those sort of things whenever it makes the most sense for the people who are presenting and what's on our agenda. But it seems like we will have enough items on the agenda for the next meeting to have a meeting, even without having a presenter scheduled.
Well, currently what we have on the agenda for next week would be, if you look at your current agenda, after public participation, we would get updates regarding the committee.
Nope, volunteers.
Well, no, we would get updates regarding the community meetings from our volunteers. And other than that, that would be our agenda currently as it stands. What else? Oh, okay. All right. Yes.
My name is Mark Enslin, and I'm also with the Build Programs Not Jails group. And when the discussion came of getting a presentation from the Community Justice Task Force. It sounded like there was a confusion between that and the ILPP assessment. And both of those documents are available on the county's website, and it might be a good thing for everybody in the committee to become at least somewhat familiar with both of those documents. The ILPP report touches on racial disparity, and from what I remember of it, it's pretty much stating that it exists and it's a problem to be dealt with. And I think you all are supposed to take up from that point and go further to analyze why and what could be done. So that was really all my comment.
May I ask a question? Mark, can I ask a question? Can you just direct, what are the names of these, so to help us find it on the website, what are the names of these documents and/or where on the website can we find them?
Oh, it's also on the Build Programs Not Jails website, but, or in the county website.
If I go to the county website, what am I looking for?
Looking for the report of the Community Justice Task Force, their final report, which has 10 recommendations on it. Excellently written document. I referred to it in the county board several times. And then there's the ILPP assessment. And this was a company that was hired by the county board to come in and do a comprehensive assessment of the criminal justice system in the county as input to the question of whether to build a jail.
And that's ILPP?
ILPP, that's the initials of the company itself, and I don't remember exactly what it stands for.
It's the Institute for Law and Policy Planning.
The website for the specific URL for that is on the list that we were given at that
First meeting,
with the list of references.
Are both of these on that list or no?
The ILPP is, and then the Champaign County Community Justice Task Force report
Is on that list too?
is on there as well. Okay. Basically, the second one is the task force report, the third one is the ILPP.
Thank you.
When I pulled up the ILPP thing, it was 250 pages if you print it out. So I didn't know if there was a way, if it's already out there somewhere that we can buy, that I could buy. I'd like it in hard copy because my eyes are old. But I don't know.
Sarah?
I wasn't here the first meeting, and I don't have that handout with resources. I wonder if that's something we could email, or?
Yeah, I'll ask Kay to send it out. Yeah, I'll just have her send it out to all of us. That way we'll have an electronic copy.
Wasn't it what we were, I mean, what we emailed, this
Yeah.
was just hard copy? Okay.
It was just hard copy. I'll have Kay email it out. All right. Now, I know we are getting, was there any additional comments regarding the
Are we
special
still on
guests and
special guests?
recommendations?
Yeah, I have a quick.
Yes.
Two quick things. One would just be maybe a suggestion that when we're thinking about community events, we could piggyback on the information that's presented at our meetings into community events as well, so that it is more, it's out there more for more people to hear and see. Just a thought. And then there's a really great toolkit from the Seattle Police Department about social justice and racial justice. I emailed like 40 minutes before the meeting, so just to Sam, because I wasn't sure how that, if we can email it to everybody. So I can't do that. No, we can,
No,
we just
Kay-
can't comment it.
Kay can email it to
Kay
everybody.
can email it to everybody. Okay, I CC'd her on that. So I'll hopefully that'll get to everybody, but it's a good read that I recommend.
This is another good one. This is the first chapter. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the story of Kewan Carrington, but it kind of goes in detail about the background facts of it within the first chapter of this, and I think it's very helpful.
Can you read the name and title, please?
Beneath the Surface, of white supremacy, denaturalizing U.S. racism's past and present, and it's by Moon Key, and it's like MOON hyphen KIE, Yoon, and that's, the last name is Yoon, JUNG. Yeah.
I brought two books along that I have actually not read yet, but just bought because about 4 different people said these would be things I should read if I'm on this committee. One is the New Jim Crow, which some of you have probably all done this because you're newer at this than, I'm not as new at this as I am. And the other is called America's Original Sin by Jim Wallace, which is Racism, White Privilege, and the Bridge to a New America. So Jim Wallace, America's Original Sin, Racism, White Privilege, and the Bridge to a New America.
I also have the new Jim Crow book, but I also got the addition to it, which is the new Jim Crow study guide and a call to action. And it really sets up a framework for ideas to do exactly what this task force is charged with doing, going out into the community and making a difference. So the author of this is Michelle Alexander, and it's also a good read.
Is it study guide? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's the new Jim Crow study guide and call to action.
This isn't a book, but when we're looking at reports, the city of Urbana did an analysis of traffic stop data for the purpose of looking at racial disparities, and just finished it last October, and it's online on the city of Urbana's website. Or if you just Google Urbana IDOT, that stands for Illinois Department of Transportation, so just capital IDOT, Urbana IDOT Traffic Stop Data Task Force. The link comes right up to the report. It's another one of these big, you don't necessarily want to print it out, but you might want to look through it, and because it's got a lot of good data and also findings and recommendations that are really interesting.
Yes,
Yeah, well, yeah.
sir?
So these will be in our minutes, and maybe Kay will, we could have links potentially in the minutes or something maybe, or something.
I could send her the link and ask her to send it to everyone. Okay, sure.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? I don't want to end without giving task force members opportunity to comment, just in general. Yes.
I just have one announcement, and people might know about this already. Community Elements is either on their own or with others, sponsoring a re-entry resource fair. Do people know about that? It's next Wednesday, March 16th from 1 to 4 p.m. at the Illinois Terminal Building. And it's for people who have conviction records to get information about how to, help with employment, housing, how to get state ID, some of the real basic stuff. There is somebody there is going to be talking to them there about expunging records and whatnot. So just if you know anyone who might benefit from this or might be interested in it, it's, again, next Wednesday, March 16th from 1 to 4 p.m.
Any other announcements or updates, comments, concerns?
I just need to clarify, are we meeting next week or not?
We are meeting 2 weeks from today.
Okay.
Yes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.